Turns out betrayal is best served with a passed hors d'oeuvre and a side of shock. My revenge started before the vows. I'm Eric Nash, 35 years old, and I've always been the guy who fixes things. Started in blue-collar work, moved into IT, built my own security systems company from nothing. The kind of guy who notices when the Wi-Fi password changes, when phone screens get tilted away, when silk scarves that aren't yours show up in gym bags. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The old foundry gleamed like a jewel that September evening, its glass walls reflecting Portland's harbor lights. 200 of Maine's finest had gathered for our engagement party, Claire's idea, naturally. She loved a spectacle, loved being the center of attention in her designer dress, loved playing the successful marketing executive who'd landed the scrappy entrepreneur. "Eric, darling," Claire called out, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she was about to drop a bomb. The crowd quieted, champagne glasses suspended mid-sip. "Before we go any further, I think we should discuss the prenup." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I watched her face, that perfectly composed mask she wore to client meetings, and felt something cold settle in my chest. She was doing this here now, in front of everyone, because she thought it would pressure me into agreeing to whatever terms she'd dreamed up. "Funny you should mention that," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. The envelope crinkled as I pulled it out. I had the same thought. Her confidence flickered for just a moment. "What's that?" "Our prenup. Already drawn up. Already reviewed by my attorney." I handed it to her with a smile. I figured someone as business savvy as you would appreciate efficiency. The color drained from her face as she scanned the first page. My terms were simple. What's mine stays mine, what's hers stays hers, and any attempt at infidelity voids all financial claims. I'd learned a lot about asset protection in the past few months. This isn't what we discussed," she stammered. "We never discussed it, Claire. You just announced it. In front of 200 people." I raised my glass to the crowd. "To transparency in marriage." The applause was uncertain, confused, but I caught the knowing looks from a few of my tech buddies, the raised eyebrows from her marketing colleagues. They knew something was up. That night, Claire tried to backtrack, tried to laugh it off as a misunderstanding, but I was already 3 steps ahead, had been for weeks. You see, when you install security systems for a living, you tend to notice when your own house isn't secure. The next morning, she was desperate. "Eric, we need to talk about last night." "What's to talk about? You wanted a prenup, you got one. Sign it or don't. But the terms are fair, unless you're planning something that would make them problematic." She wasn't planning something. She was already doing it. Modern domestic bliss, as it turns out, has a distinct digital fingerprint. Late-night texts from Julian R., her boss at Pinnacle Marketing, deleted browser histories, a phone that never left her side, always face down, always locked. My buddy Marcus, who'd been my best man at the engagement party, dropped by the condo on a Tuesday evening. He's the kind of guy who notices everything but says nothing until asked directly. "Nice Mustang in the visitor parking," he mentioned, cracking open a beer. "Classic 67, cherry red, belongs to someone with taste." "Julian's," I said without looking up from my laptop. "Claire's boss. They've been having a lot of late-night brainstorming sessions." Marcus nearly choked on his beer. Brainstorming, right. The beautiful thing about being in the security business is that you learn to see patterns. Claire's gym bag, for instance, had started containing items that didn't belong. A silk scarf in burgundy, she only wore blues and grays, a hotel keycard from the Harbor Grand, we'd never stayed there, and once, memorably, a man's cufflink with the initials JR. I'd installed our home security system myself, naturally. Top-of-the-line cameras, motion sensors, the works. Claire thought it was overkill for a condo, but I'd convinced her it was necessary for someone who worked with sensitive client data. What she didn't know was that I'd upgraded the system recently, New cameras, better audio, remote access capabilities that would make the NSA jealous. The footage from the previous Thursday was particularly enlightening. Claire and Julian, right there in my living room on my couch, discussing their weekend getaway to Montreal. Not just the romantic aspects, though there was plenty of that, but their little side business of skimming money from client accounts. "Eric's so naive," Claire had laughed, her head on Julian's shoulder. "He actually thinks I'm working late. We could pin the whole thing on him if it ever comes out. Make it look like he hacked into our systems." "Your husband does have access to everything," Julian had agreed. "Perfect fall guy." That's when I knew this wasn't just about an affair. They were planning to destroy me, frame me for their crimes, and walk away with both the money and each other. My sister Liz called that evening, her voice tight with concern. "Eric, I heard some things at the country club today, about Claire and her boss." "What kind of things?" "The kind that make me want to drive over there and slap some sense into you. Are you really going to let her make a fool of you?" "Who says I'm letting her do anything?" There was a pause. "What are you planning?" "Nothing illegal. Nothing that isn't already theirs to begin with." "Eric, trust me, Liz, I've got this handled." But handling it meant getting proof that would hold up in court, proof that would destroy their credibility before they could destroy mine, and that meant following them to Montreal. The Chateau Frontenac looked like something out of a fairy tale, all towers and copper roofs overlooking the St. Lawrence River. Perfect setting for a romantic getaway, if you ignored the fact that it was being funded by embezzled client money. I'd hired Sophie Dubois, a private investigator recommended by my attorney. French-Canadian, mid-40s, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made her invaluable for corporate espionage cases. "Your wife and her boyfriend, they are not subtle," she reported on our second day. "They discuss business in the hotel bar, in the restaurant, even by the pool. Amateur criminals, both of them." The audio recordings were damning. Claire and Julian, drunk on wine and their own cleverness, laying out their entire scheme. They'd been skimming money from client marketing budgets for months, hiding it in offshore accounts, planning to disappear together once they'd accumulated enough. "The beauty of it," Julian's voice crackled through Sophie's recording equipment, "is that Eric's the perfect patsy. He's got access to all the systems, all the client data. When the auditors come looking, all the evidence will point to him. And I'll be the grieving wife who had no idea her husband was a criminal," Claire added. "Might even get sympathy points in the divorce." That's when I made my mistake. I got angry. I was watching them from across the hotel lobby, these two people who thought they were so much smarter than everyone else, when Julian spotted me. His face went white, then red. Then he was striding across the marble floor with murder in his eyes. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snarled. "Enjoying Montreal, beautiful city, great for romantic getaways." I kept my voice level, but my hands were clenched into fists. "You're following us." "I'm following my wife, big difference." That's when he shoved me, hard, right there in the lobby of a 5-star hotel, with tourists and staff watching. I stumbled back, caught myself against a pillar, and felt something cold and calculating settle over me. "You want to do this here?" I asked quietly. "I want you to get the hell out of here and stay away from Claire." "Or what?" "Or I'll make sure the police know about your little hacking hobby. Amazing what they might find on your computers." The threat was clear. They were going to frame me whether I interfered or not, which meant I had nothing to lose by fighting back. Sophie appeared at my elbow, her camera discreetly recording everything. "Trouble, Mr. Nash?" "Just a misunderstanding," I said, never taking my eyes off Julian. "Mr. Reed was just explaining how he plans to frame me for his crimes." Julian's face went purple. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Sophie, why don't you play back that recording from the bar last night?" The color drained from his face as Sophie held up her phone, Claire's voice crystal clear. Eric's the perfect patsy. That night, I uploaded everything to a secure server and sent copies to 3 different email accounts. Then I called my attorney, my accountant, and my sister. "It's time," I told Liz. "Tomorrow, everything changes." The emergency board meeting at Pinnacle Marketing was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday. By 9:30, every major gossip blog in Portland had received anonymous packages containing audio recordings, photographs, and detailed financial records. Julian tried to take control of the narrative from the moment he walked into the conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious security breach. It appears that Claire Evans's husband has been using his access to hack into our systems and steal client funds." Mr. Huntley, the CEO, looked skeptical. "Do we have proof of this?" "We have evidence that money has been moved from client accounts, and Eric Nash certainly had the technical capability." "Actually," I interrupted, walking into the conference room with Marcus and my attorney, "I have evidence of who really moved that money." The next 30 minutes were beautiful in their precision. Every transaction traced back to Julian's access codes. Every forged document bearing Claire's electronic signature. Every offshore account linked to their personal information. Ms. Price from HR took notes with the dedication of someone who knew she was witnessing a career-ending scandal. The board members whispered among themselves, their faces growing darker by the minute. "This is fabricated," Claire protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "The FBI's forensic accountants will determine that," my attorney replied smoothly. "We've already filed a report." Julian tried one last desperate play. "Even if some money was moved, it was Claire's idea. I was just following orders." The look Claire gave him could have melted steel. "You bastard." "Now that's the Claire I know," I said. "Always so charming when things don't go her way." By noon, both of them were suspended pending investigation. By evening, the local news had picked up the story. By the weekend, Claire's parents had changed their locks and Julian's wife had filed for divorce. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The real masterpiece came the following Monday. Julian's pride and joy, that cherry-red Mustang, was parked in his driveway when the sprinkler system mysteriously activated. Not the lawn sprinklers, the emergency sprinkler system I'd installed in his garage 6 months earlier when he'd hired my company for a security upgrade. The car's interior was soaked, the electronics fried, and the whole thing was captured in high-definition video by his own security cameras. The footage went viral within hours. Cheating boss gets hosed. Julian knew it was me. He couldn't prove it, but he knew. That's when he made his biggest mistake. He tried to fight back. Doug Henley was the kind of private investigator who gave the profession a bad name. Cheap suit, cheaper cologne, and the investigative skills of a particularly dim golden retriever. Julian had hired him to dig up dirt on me, to find something, anything, that could be used as leverage. What Doug found instead was a comprehensive education in why you don't mess with someone who designs security systems for a living. I led him on a merry chase through downtown Portland on a rainy Tuesday night. Down side streets, through parking garages, past security cameras that I knew were recording everything. Marcus followed in his car, using a drone to film the whole thing from above. Doug's car broke down in the old Port District. Something about sugar in the gas tank, though I couldn't imagine how that happened. While he waited for a tow truck, I had a friendly conversation with him about his employer and their plans. "Look, Mr. Nash, I'm just doing a job here. I understand, but the job you're doing is helping 2 criminals cover their tracks. That makes you an accessory. I don't know anything about any crimes." I showed him the video on my phone. Doug's face as he watched Julian hand him an envelope of cash and explain exactly what they wanted him to find, or manufacture, was priceless. "Here's what's going to happen," I told him. "You're going to call Julian and tell him you couldn't find anything on me. Then you're going to send me a copy of everything he's asked you to do. In exchange, this video doesn't end up in the hands of the Maine State Police." Doug was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. He took the deal. That's how I learned about Claire's final desperate gambit. She'd been working with a video editor, someone Julian knew from his advertising days, to create a fake domestic abuse video. Security camera footage from our condo, carefully edited to make it look like I'd been violent with her. The plan was to release it just before the FBI investigation concluded, to destroy my credibility and paint me as the real villain. The only problem was that my security system recorded everything in multiple formats, with timestamps that couldn't be faked. When Claire's edited video surfaced on social media, I was ready with the full, unedited footage that showed her staging the entire thing. The revelation destroyed what little sympathy she had left. Her friends abandoned her. Her family disowned her. Even Julian, facing federal charges, threw her under the bus to try to save himself. But I still had one last surprise for both of them. The old foundry stood empty on a stormy October night, its windows dark except for the single conference room I'd rented for the evening, the same room where our engagement party had been held just 2 months earlier. "Why did you want to meet here?" Claire asked as she walked in, Julian beside her. They both looked terrible, hollow-eyed, desperate, clinging to each other like drowners. "Nostalgia," I said. "This is where it all started, after all." Marcus was there, along with my sister Liz and my attorney, but they weren't the only ones. As Claire and Julian took their seats at the conference table, other figures emerged from the shadows. Miranda Reed, Julian's soon-to-be ex-wife, Mr. Huntley and Ms. Price from Pinnacle Marketing, Tara and Gwen, Claire's former friends who'd been spreading gossip about her for weeks, Dave Martinez from the Portland Herald, his camera ready. "What is this?" Julian demanded. "This is your reckoning," I replied. "For 2 months, you've been trying to destroy my life, frame me for your crimes, and steal everything I've worked for. Tonight, we're going to settle the score." I activated the large screen on the wall. The first video was security footage from our condo, showing Claire and Julian planning their embezzlement scheme. The second was audio from Montreal, where they discussed using me as their fall guy. The third was Doug's recording of Julian trying to manufacture evidence against me. "Ladies and gentlemen of the press," I said to Dave's camera, "I present the real criminals in this case." Claire tried to run. The doors were locked. Julian tried to spin it, tried to claim the evidence was fabricated. Miranda laughed in his face. "You destroyed my marriage for this pathetic little schemer?" she asked, pointing at Claire. "She's not even pretty enough to be worth it." The final video was the masterpiece. Claire, in our bedroom, practicing her fake abuse story in front of the mirror, rehearsing her tears, her trembling voice, her victim act. She'd been so focused on her performance that she'd never noticed the camera hidden in the smoke detector. "The FBI has copies of everything," I announced. "The financial crimes, the attempted frame-up, the fake abuse allegations. You're both looking at federal charges for embezzlement, conspiracy, and fraud." Claire broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Julian just sat there, staring at the screen, finally understanding that he'd been outplayed from the beginning. "The beautiful thing about being married to someone in marketing," I told the room, "is that you learn a lot about managing public perception. And the beautiful thing about being in the security business is that you learn a lot about protecting yourself." I walked to the windows, looking out at the harbor where this had all began. The storm was clearing, stars beginning to show through the clouds. "Oh, and Julian, about that Mustang. The insurance company has decided not to pay out. Something about suspicious circumstances. But don't worry, I know a great mechanic who can fix water damage, for the right price." The room erupted in chaos. Claire screaming accusations, Julian threatening lawsuits, Miranda demanding her share of their assets, the reporters asking questions, the board members discussing criminal liability. I walked out into the storm, Marcus beside me. "So what now?" he asked. "Now? Now I rebuild. New company, new life, new everything." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "And I've got Julian's Mustang being delivered to my garage tomorrow. Turns out he signed the title over to me as collateral for some work I did. Amazing what people will sign when they're desperate." Marcus laughed. You magnificent bastard. I prefer thorough professional, but bastard works too. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, washed new. Behind us, the old foundry blazed with lights as my former wife and her lover faced the consequences of their choices. Justice, I reflected, was a beautiful thing when properly executed.